What's going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to share 5 ways to make your email marketing more persuasive so that email can be by far your most profitable and most reliable sales channel. So really quickly, I like the word persuasion. I've talked about influence, persuasion, sales in past videos. There's a lot of words that kind of mean the same thing, but they have different connotations to it. And I like persuasion. So really quickly, just to define the definition of persuade, what it means to persuade someone, it means to cause someone to do something through reasoning or argument. And then similar definitions would be to cause someone to believe something, especially after a sustained effort to convince them, or to provide a sound reason for someone to do something. So what we're really doing here is, what I'm talking about here is that we're trying to give people compelling reasons to buy your products or services. So that's the whole point of email marketing. And yet for some reason, people get so distracted from that, and they just send a bunch of boring newsletters or random quote unquote value content that doesn't actually do anything to persuade someone to buy, and they get caught up in these really just played out strategies of where you got to have this long drawn out sequence of providing a bunch of value until finally you have their permission, which they never really told you about, but you think you do, to start selling to them, right? And that's just not persuasive, because again, someone's not going to be convinced to buy from you if you're scared to sell them, because if you're scared to sell them, then what you're selling must suck, or you're not confident in it, or whatever. But all of those things send a signal that this is probably not the best company to buy from, versus the company that's not afraid to sell their products, but they have to do it in a way that's interesting and is convincing, right? You can't just be the spammer who just blasts people with, buy, and you don't give them any compelling reason, because again, that's not persuasive either. That's just being spammy, and that's just being annoying. So the whole deal here is that you have to, one, not be afraid to sell, right? So not beat around the bush about what you're trying to do, but two, it has to be convincing. You have to make it interesting, and you have to change someone's mind. And that's the thing, is that we like to be convinced of things. We don't like to be sold, but we like to be convinced. We like to be persuaded, because being persuaded is fun and being sold is annoying. So that's really the distinction here, is that we're convincing them for them to genuinely make the decision on their own. We've just given them such a compelling argument. We've presented so much compelling evidence as to why them making that decision is the right decision. So, okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump into 5 ways you can make your emails more persuasive. The first thing and most important thing is to talk about your customers more than you talk about your products. And what that means is you need to have a clear and effective messaging strategy, not just for your email marketing, but for all of your marketing and sales, meaning that you need to actually understand the people that you're selling to, and you need to understand how they think and how they feel, and the worries and concerns that they have, and the problems that they faced, again, as these things relate to what you're selling. And you also need to understand on the other side their hopes and dreams and aspirations, and what they're looking to accomplish, and the lifestyle that they're trying to live, that your products or services hopefully help them achieve. All of these things, you need to actually understand what makes them, what would make a compelling argument to them in the first place, by understanding their biases, their preferences, their wants, needs, hopes, fears, all of that. So if you don't understand your people, that's the first place to start. Is you've got to take the time to research and to understand and create a buyer persona or a customer avatar, whatever you want to call it. And then in your emails, talk more about them than you do your product. So I see this all the time whenever we'll go audit the Klaviyo account for a potential client, and we can see obviously the emails that either they or another team have created for them that they've been sending out. And it's crazy. I just saw this actually yesterday, how often the messaging that's in the email is something that you could literally copy and paste into a completely different company's same email, whether it's like a welcome email or a campaign or whatever, and no one would know the difference. And the reason why is because that email's message said nothing specific about those particular customers and why they should care about the product that then followed that message. So, it's not persuasive to just say, hey, it's the new year, it's time to get a new start and buy our product. products. It's like, no, 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 no. Excuse me. Say you're selling a fitness product. And this is actually the thing I saw yesterday. You need to talk about, okay, so it's the new year. Why do they care? Why does this person care that it's the new year? And why do they care that they should get a new fresh start because it's the new year? So, maybe they've been working on their fitness goals for the last several months, and they were doing so great, but then they fell off through the holidays and they just couldn't get back on track on the holidays. But now it's a new year and the holidays are over and they're more focused and they've already set their goals. You talk specifically about the things that they care about, the things they're going through, and also just understanding the way they think, because people who are drawn to those types of products tend to be more goal oriented. They like to set up goals and they like to go chase those goals. So if you talk more about them and what's going on with their life, then as opposed to focusing all on the product and the specific benefits of that product, it's going to be more interesting to them because they feel like you actually know them, they feel like you understand them, and anyone would rather buy from a company that actually knows, understands, and cares about them versus some company that's just trying to sell products and has no thoughtfulness in their message about where you are coming from. So that's the first one, is you've got to focus more on your customers than you do on what you're selling. The second thing you can do to make your emails more persuasive is to leverage social proof. And that means including in your emails UGC, which is user-generated content. So if a customer of yours posts a photo of them using your product on social media, get their permission and save those photos every time people do that, so that way you can use those photos in emails. And what this does is a couple of things. So one, it shows these buyers that, okay, they're not the first ones to buy. You already have customers. You have customers that are clearly happy, and because you can see, hopefully the look on their face, they're smiling when they're using the product, or they say something nice about the product. But the other thing is, this goes a little bit deeper into the psychology of it, is that your customers will tend to be a certain type. So, like two different brands, if they have very clear and compelling messages, they're going to attract different types of people. And people like to be in clubs. We're very, we're social beings. So we like to be around like-minded people. So the more UGC you have, the more people start to pick up on these patterns of the way your customers look, how they dress, how they talk, the slang they use, what they do for fun, all these little subtle things that you can see in people's videos and their posts, where you get to know them and you kind of understand the type of person they are. That attracts more people like that. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is when you're sharing UGC, you don't really want to share UGC if let's just say you've got 10 photos from customers of yours that you could share, and one of them is just very weird and different from the rest of your customers, or just doesn't fit your customer profile at all. You'd be better off not sharing that, even if that person said something nice, because it might turn off the customers that you're trying to attract and the people you're trying to attract, and that person is probably more of an outlier and more of an exception to the rule than the rule. And you really want to reinforce the rule, or reinforce trying to attract the people that would naturally already be a better fit for what you're selling. So in addition to UGC, you can include reviews. Also, anytime you're mentioned in any kind of mainstream media, showing off where you've been mentioned, things like that. Those are all social proof. Okay, so the third thing you can do to make your emails more persuasive is to email more often. So a lot of times it sounds crazy because of so many businesses that will, completely spam you with emails. You might not believe that there are businesses out there that don't email enough, but it's actually a lot more common than you think. And the reason why this is important is because there's a lot of psychological research that shows that the things that we put more attention on, we naturally put more value on, that's the reason why celebrities have an allure, and why people think celebrities are special. And it's just because there's so much attention put on them through the media that people think they're more important than they are. They think they're more interesting than they actually are. So there's two psychological components here: attention and repetition. So the more attention something has, the more that we naturally think we place more value on that thing. The more something commands our attention, the more valuable we think that thing is. The second piece of that is repetition. And again, there's a lot of research on this that shows that the more we see a certain message, just not so much the fact that it's not just the fact that it has our attention, it's the fact that it has our attention often and it's a repeated thing where we see it over and over. The more we see it, the more compelling it becomes, the more valuable it becomes. And also we just know that it's top of mind awareness, right? So if I'm in the market to buy new shoes and there's this one company that's just constantly, I see their ads everywhere on Facebook and Instagram, and I get their emails, and then there's some other random company that sells similar shoes, but I never see their stuff anywhere. Which one, what's the first one that's going to come to mind whenever I decide, okay, I'm ready to buy those, I'm ready to buy some shoes like that? I'm of course going to go to the one that I've seen so many times over and over first. Doesn't mean I'm guaranteed to buy from them, but they get the first shot because they have held so much attention and they've done it in a repetitive way. So that's why you want to be emailing more often, even if that just means like once a week. Okay. And then the fourth way to make your emails more persuasive is to leverage segmentation and to personalize the emails towards those segments. I talk about this all the time. And again, it's because it's something that just people just don't do. And it's so simple. So this is where you create segments or smaller groups of people within your total email list based around certain characteristics. So maybe it's based around, where they live in the country, or based around their gender, or based around products that they've bought from you before, whatever. Something where you can now craft the message in a way that speaks to that group specifically and excludes the other groups. And the reason why this is effective is because it's going to be naturally more interesting to them. The more you get to know your customers, the more you have personalized that email to them, meaning if you're showing them products that you already know they're interested in versus showing them products that you have no idea if they're interested in them or not, of course, it's just common sense. They're going to find the email about the products they're interested in more compelling. Same thing, if you send an email about a product line that's catered towards their gender, they're going to be more likely to be interested because it's just a little bit more specialized to them. And that's really all it takes. You don't have to go, it's not about trying to, use their name a bunch of times in the email and do a bunch of other stuff that's kind of comes off creepy sometimes. It's just about giving that little extra touch, just that little extra personalization. So they make it clear where when they receive that email, they know, okay, this email couldn't have been sent to everyone. They're probably not going to think it was sent to only them, of course, but they know that you're actually being thoughtful in what you're doing, and you're including them in times when it's more interesting for them, and you're not including them in things that aren't as interesting, because the more often you email them things that aren't interesting, the more likely they are to just start ignoring your emails and never open them again. Okay, then the last thing here, number 5, as far as some simple ways to make your emails more persuasive, is to design around your copy. Don't try to force your copy to fit into a templated design. This is, again, a really common mistake where we're very visual, so a lot of times people will they'll choose a design or a template beforehand that they want to have for the email, and then they try to write in a way to where everything's going to fit nice and neat in that template they created. And the reason why this is not the best way to do it and not the most persuasive thing to do is because the message is the absolute most important thing in your email. Everything in your email revolves around the message, which means you need to have good copywriting. And if you try to fit copywriting into a template, and sometimes it just works out and hey, it fits perfectly, that's totally fine. But a lot of times it doesn't really fit neatly. So what that requires you to do is edit the copy where maybe you are, maybe the message now isn't quite as effective as it would have been because you had to change up how you said things or how many words were used. And maybe you had to add in some other copy that's more of filler because you had these empty spaces in that template that you had to fill up. So now you've got this fluff in there that was not necessary. These are some of the things that come up. Versus if you have the copy ready to go, okay, this is exactly what we want to say. We don't have any extra stuff that we don't want in here. And we know how we want this to impact them. We know how we want them to feel when they're reading this. Now the designer can design around the copy and accentuate those the parts of the message that you want to have a bigger impact. So maybe taking a sentence from a paragraph, separating it out, and having that have its own little visual section dedicated just to that one sentence because that is the most impactful sentence in the email, and you're drawing more attention to it. The other thing is that you can use a design to take them down that journey of starting with the initial headline and going down and then getting to that CTA button and using visual cues to guide them along the message so it's just easier to read, it's quicker to read, and more effective for them to actually take in the information. And then also you're just making that call to action more attractive. So this is something that to me is just fundamental. It's something we do with our emails, but I don't don't see done a lot. And it maybe might sound a little bit more advanced, but honestly it's not, because you don't need your designs to be complicated. In fact, it's better to just keep them simple. So always start with the message, start with the copy first, and then design around them.